Hello, how are we all today? It's my popular question because it is important and it also shows how much concern of you and about you we are from this side of the divide. My name is Elizabeth Abaya and the program is We Can Deal. Yes. Once again, topical issue will be x-rayed, and of course you and I will make our contributions towards ensuring that we put that particular topic on the light where it belongs. Now, what is our focus for today? I'll take you down memory lane. Those of us who were born long ago, yes, some people are going to argue with me on that, and I really don't mind. I like such arguments. We ate a lot of things around the village setting that was not rice. There was not some kind of bread. There was not particularly yam. It was the fufu, if you like. A lot of times now we call it swallow. And from where I'm coming from, we call it akpo, yes. And the product from which it is generated is also, responsible for several other products, from the tapioca, the gari, the cassava bread. Yes, I just gave you the name. It is the cassava. And cassava, a lot of times, has been put to different use. Certain advocacies have been made for it to move from one end to the other, including the pharmaceutical. The question is, where are we now? That will be our point, our focal point, and of course we're going to look at the different uses we put to cassava from different parts of Nigeria. We Can Do our cassava story. We're about to launch that big time. It's imperative we understand where we are coming from, where we are now, and probably my projection for tomorrow, your projection for tomorrow. That would be our background. And when we come back, we're going to take you around and get to find out the uses and ways we eat the cassava. Let's go there.
Nigeria is blessed with an abundance of arable lands and natural endowments such as favorable weather, fertile soil, and an energetic youth population. One of the major food crops that has placed Nigeria on the global stage is cassava. Cassava production is vital to the economy of Nigeria, as the country is the world's largest producer of the commodity. The crop is produced in 24 of the country's 36 states.
Cassava is this kind of crop that there's nothing to compare it with. Everything about cassava is useful. Be it the tubers, be it the stem, be it the leaves, and even the peeled out leaves. They use it for feed. You can use cassava peeled out for that. You can also feed your pigs with it.
Cassava, which is rich in starch in the form of carbohydrate, has multiple uses. It is consumed in many processed forms in the industry and also as livestock feed. Roots or leaves are made into flours, and the flours are of three types: yellow gari, white gari, or intermediate color, with yellow gari considered the best. Other products are dry starch, glue or adhesives, and modified starch in pharmaceuticals.
We have what we call cassava flour. When you get cassava flour, you can produce bread from it. You can produce chin-chin. You can produce anything, confectionaries generally, from cassava flour. If you come to gari, we have white one, they call white gari. We also have the ones they mix with oil. But recently, there was another cassava that you can't even use oil to fry, but it will turn yellow as if you put oil. That's another one. You can just come in, soak it, and drink. You can come in, use it anyway, anytime. You can even chew it like that without anything and take water, and that is it. So it can feed you as fast as anything. That's why they mention much about gari. Soak in water is food. Put in hot water, it turns to food. Anyhow you want to use it, easily you can use it. I take my own as fufu. I don't even go to garden. I take it as fufu, and that one gives me joy. They prepare it in various ways. There are fufu they will prepare. You will not hear the odor at all. You will not even know you are eating fufu. Aha, that's the one we go for. Then there's other these ones that factories can produce, which they also call odorless fufu, all from cassava. All are derived from cassava. That one you package and sell is international market even right now.
In an attempt to support the cassava processing industry, the government launched the Cassava Transformation Agenda in 2011, which was geared towards increasing the demand for cassava flour and reduce the demand for wheat. The import would cost the country about $1.5 billion each year. The increase in demand will be driven by a mandate requiring bakers to mix high-quality cassava flour with wheat when baking bread. How far have we gone with the cassava bread project in Nigeria?
Many people did not understand it fully then, like I said. But right now, where is cassava? Where is the bread? Where is the flour? So the production cost is what they were actually battling with. At the end of the day, the production cost comes very high. And so they were looking for something that they can give them immediate gain and faster gain. They were not looking at the potentials in that one there.
Despite Nigeria's position as the top producer, the country's ability to process cassava is very limited. Processing offers not just the ability to produce higher value, exportable cassava items like tapioca, but also essential items like glucose, which Nigeria spends millions each year importing. Thailand's position as the global leader in cassava processing and exporting demonstrates the incredible amount of untapped potential that lays waiting in Nigeria.
If there's anything to do to reduce the cost of production, it will sell faster and people will embrace all the ideas about cassava. Even the program and project will go fast.
The theme for Weekend Deal this week is tagged Our Cassava Story.
Later on in the program, I'll bring in a guest who will be telling us, or answering your question about the cultivation of that particular crop, that's a cassava. But for now, during the background, when we're watching, we're told a lot of things are made of the cassava. One of them is the gari. Now, a lot of people do not understand that gari is one thing that you can use for a whole lot of things. For instance, when I was going to school, when you're feeling sleepy, just take a little bit of your gari, take a little bit of your choco, that's chocolate, take a little bit of milk, granulated sugar, mix it all, put inside polythene bag. You see that your school uniform? Pocket it. When lecturer is talking, take a bit in your mouth. That's very sweet. We call it gari flakes. But then the multi-directional uses of the gari, Thelma, it's up to you.
Gari is one of the most staple Nigerian diets, and since Nigeria is at the forefront of cassava production in Africa and the world, it is readily available. With about 130 million people in the rural and urban areas consuming about 12 million tons of gari every year. We have white non-sour gari, and then there's the popular Ijebu gari, and we have yellow gari.
It was relatively cheaper than other crops. So for some people, it's affordability. So what they can afford to buy with their own income to feed themselves and their families. So that is one factor. The other factor is that, of course, all of us grew up in our own environments with an acquired taste. What our culture or our parents used to feed us with, and we acquired that taste, and so we usually keep to it because it has become very familiar to us. And so as we age or grow up, we still stick with what we have been used to. I personally lived in the US, for example, for several years. But even in the US, I used to crave for gari and for dry fish and for other Nigerian foods.
Research shows that the average price of gari per model rose by 35% from 2020 to 2021. Perhaps the demand for gari is on the increase. Some like it hot, with soup.
Because if you use white gari for a bath, It's not nice like that. But yellow gari is the best for me. I prefer ogbono soup. And sometimes egusi.
There are those who like it cold.
With the way this gari is so sweet, I wonder how people take yellow gari and sugar together.
Where did you get it from? Like, this gari is the best. There's nothing to compare Ijebu gari with.
This legendary Nigerian cereal has an enviable position in many homes, irrespective of status or location.
There's a taste for Nigerian products like yam and gari and cassava outside of this country. There's a very huge Nigerian diaspora population that is already accustomed to our own Nigerian food.
East, west, north or south, home and its unique flavors are always best. There are many ways to enjoy cassava flakes or garium sulfate, as some call it. Nigerians like to enjoy themselves though, and it does not hurt that gari has many benefits. It can be eaten at any time of the day. It eases digestion. Many say gari boosts energy. Some also opine that it aids with weight loss. In fact, the benefits are enormous.
One of the ways that we can improve our own economy and even earn foreign exchange is to not just think about producing for home consumption, but also thinking about export.
Gari most likely will remain at the top of the list of things that Nigerians enjoy.
All right, gari and its numerous ways and multi-dimensional uses, and of course, any of all of that, everybody will tell you it is very, very sweet. Drink it, chew it, do it my own style. That's the gari flakes. Beautiful. Well, I told you earlier that I'll be introducing a guest in the studio who will be telling us a whole lot about the gari processing and the gari cultivation and, of course, benefit why we must invest in the production of the crop. So I have with me already in the studio Chief Austin Maduka, and it is our pleasure to have you. Now, while that program was going on, what are the types of gari and what are the differences?
Yeah, well, as I told you before, coming on stage, I told you we have different varieties of gari, especially the vitamin A gari that was developed sometime by IITA and Omudike, which is yellow in color,
yes.
Not the usual one we know that is mixed with oil.
Okay, this one is
pure,
naturally
yellow,
okay.
No mixture of oil.
Okay.
It's just pure yellow gari, and as you peel and dry and fry, it is yellow in color, and it contains a lot of vitamins. It's good for diabetic patients and aged people.
Okay,
yes.
Why is it that good for them?
Well, it's a new variety of cassava.
Okay, low calorie.
Yes, that was developed by IITA and Omudike Research Institute. So it's packed with a lot of nutrients and vitamins. All
right, you also talked about the Ijebu gari and the other one that you say has more starch.
I talked about the different types of gari that is available. We have the Ijebu gari, which is usually for the southwestern part of Nigeria. The taste is different from the Edo Bendel gari, as we usually call it. It's different because the Edo Bendel gari is more starchy, it draws. And then the Ijebu gari is flat in nature, and it's also not having a lot of starch content.
So it's easier to drink it and enjoy it?
It is easier to drink, than the Bendel gari.
What is the state of cassava production in Nigeria today?
Well, we all know that Nigeria is the highest grower of cassava in the world.
Really?
Yeah, and cassava, is calorie-rich vegetable crop, which have a lot of carbohydrates, nutrients, and vitamins. So it gives a lot of energy, just like as you said. And for women, a day without gari is like a day without, just like a vehicle, a day without fuel. So gari.
So the gari is the fuel.
Yes, it gives a lot of energy. It gives a lot of energy. And the truth of the matter is that a lot need to be done, to improve the production of cassava in Nigeria. Actually, we are the highest grower of cassava in the world. But the challenges we have is that our cassava cannot compete with the global market because of the cost of production here in Nigeria. What we use in cultivating an hectare in Nigeria cannot be compared with what others use in Thailand, in South Africa, and the other part of the world. And all these things goes to the international market. So that's why most times we cannot export some of our derivatives from cassava to European markets and other foreign markets because of the cost of production here in Nigeria.
Are we even producing enough to feed our people before we start thinking about exports?
Well, we are growing enough. We are growing enough. We are growing enough. We're growing enough. Just the challenge I think we have is that government, as a matter of national importance, should dedicate more arable lands for mechanization. Why we are as if we are not getting to where the promised land is because most of the farms that we use today are still the old method of farming, hoe and cutlasses. So as a matter of national importance, the government, most especially the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, should, as a matter of national development, develop more lands for more mechanization so that more lands can be opened and then people can really go into cassava production, mass cassava production. Cassava can be used for so many things. I don't know if you know that most of the things that we use today in the pharmaceutical industry, like for drug making.
I'm going to actually ask you about the different, because as a grower, I'm sure you have different people asking you for your products, for their different productions and different industry. But I'll hold your thoughts on that and go to Abeokuta to look at the Lafung story. That's the amala made out of this same crop. Let's see it.
Lafu is one of many derivatives of cassava. It is a common knowledge that cassava is a crop which gives energy due to its high carbohydrate content. Lafu over the years has been and continues to be a staple in local diets. More importantly, Lafu is a food staple synonymous with Egba people of Ogun State. This is not to say that other non-indigenes don't eat the food. They relish the meal so much. Little wonder the ace Juju Maestro and an Egba son, Chief Ebenezer Obefabi, sang about the importance of Lafu to Egba people. Lafu, when prepared into a pudding known as amala, can be eaten with different kinds of soup. How do you like to eat your Lafu meal?
I prefer Lafu than other swallow because Lafu is my indigenous food. Yeah, that is why I prefer Lafu than other swallow. And I prefer eating it with ewedu or egusi soup, but I even prefer ewedu than egusi, especially if I put the ewedu on it Oh wow, it's a very good and nice food.
I prefer eating amala and ewedu with abula because it's my favorite swallow food. So that's the main reason why I prefer eating it.
I like it. I love it when I see it with ewedu. Ewedu, it makes it go succulent. Like I like it with ewedu. Like it will be very easy to swallow, to eat. So it's so delicious with like that.
It is important to state that besides its high carbohydrate content, lafo provides many other health and nutritional benefits to the body system. What are other benefits of lafo meal to the body?
Lafun is an indigenous meal that is common among the Egbas. It is very, very high in fiber. Fiber is a nutrient also that helps our digestive system. Anybody that is eating high fiber diet do not have constipation.
All right, that's Lafo from Abeokuta, and I know that it's spreading real hard. A lot of people are eating it right here in Abuja. But while that story was being, it was going on, my guest, Chief Austin Maduka, was, educating me on the essence of ensuring that we eat more cassava by introducing the one you said is grown more in the north?
Yeah, there's this type of cassava is mostly consumed in the north. So, like in Daura, when I visited Daura sometime, I think about 2 years ago, we were told by the emir of Daura that it's mandatory in his kingdom that every Tuesday everybody eats cassava in Daura.
Okay.
So
every Tuesday
is a law. So if you go to the market, you see people bringing them to the market. It can be eaten raw and it can be cooked.
Somebody actually wrote in. He says, what should I be thinking about first? I know you mentioned arable lands. So if I want to go into it, I have a land. What do I do first? Land
preparation is one.
What is land preparation?
To clear the land and plow the land, harrow the land, and then reach the land, and then you spray chemicals, to kill the weeds.
Oh, really? Before planting?
Yeah, before planting.
Or not after planting?
No. The first time you apply chemicals to kill the weeds, and then you source for cassava stems, the cottons. So the cottons are also, it depends on the cottons you have. The type of cottons you have also depend on the tonnage you'll be getting at the time of harvest. If you use quality good stems, high quality stems, the new improved variety that IITA and Umudika has developed, not the local stems that some of us still use now. And then you also manage the weeding very well, because weed suppress cassava. So if you farm your cassava and allow it to be overtaken by weed, if you're expecting to get 20 tons, you may end up having not up to 8 tons per hectare, and that will affect the return on investment at the time of harvest.
Some crops are managed to grow like 2 or 3 times in a year. Is cassava one of them?
No.
What's my return time?
Cassava usually lasts between 9, 12, 15 months, depending on the variety you are planting. So, cassava is the mother of the farm. And that's why when every other crops is no longer in the farm, it's only cassava you find in the farm. So, because it's still longer than any other crops in the farm.
Wow.
Yeah, because the stem alone, from stem multiplication, a bundle of cassava goes for between 5 to 1,000 naira per bundle, and you need about 60 bundle to do 1 hectare. But if you're a stem multiplier, a stem breeder or multiplier, and you are sure that annually you will have 10,000 farmers coming to buy stems from your farm, you know you are in money. Not the root. They're not talking of the roots now, not the tuber. We're talking of the stems itself. It's another source of revenue generation.
I also know that the leaf is beneficial, but before we go into that, let's quickly go to Asaba, because when you talked about the type of gari from Edo that is more starchy and all of that, I quickly went down to when I visited Benin once, and they gave me the banga soup and the starch. At first I didn't understand it, but later on I got to enjoy it. But let's see the story on the banga and the starch.
Cassava is one of the staple food in the world. It is a good source of carbohydrate, hence being referred to as king of starch. It is rich in vitamins and minerals and other micronutrients.
Starch, bobo gari, they are all basically the same. They are made from cassava, and basically starch is a very good nutrient. It is a complex carbohydrate that is digested by the body system into glucose on a gradual process. So it is better to take starch in its complex form than taking pure glucose, because that one goes straight into the bloodstream. So starch takes time to digest gradually, and the body system absorbs it.
The cassava processing industry in Delta is massive. This is because Nigeria is the largest producer of cassava in the world. Greater percentage of processed food such as gari, fufu, starch, cassava flour, bobo gari, and so many other food. Starch eaten with banga or owo soup and bobo gari paired with groundnut or edible worms are delicacies gotten from cassava and enjoyed by Deltans.
In our place, we have different variety. You can decide to use starch and banga. You can decide to use owo, but me, I prefer owo.
Starch is not actually our main food, but we also eat it in our place. It is much more fun. We eat it with banga soup. We also eat it with owo in our place also. It's a very nice food because it goes straight. It's easier to swallow in the throat, and that's why it's mostly delicious when eating it.
The starch and bobo gari is processed side by side as the chaff gotten from the grated cassava is used to make bobo gari. Peeling and washing of the cassava is the first stage of making starch. The cassava can be grated with fabricated grater or a machine. Put your grated cassava into a sack bag and allow it to settle down. The next morning you see your starch ready for consumption, and the chaff in the sack will be used for bobo gari. The chaff is fried on fire just like in gari processing before setting it under the sun to dry, and yes, your starch and bobo gari are ready.
Starch is very good nutrition because it's rich in fiber, it's rich in calcium, it's rich in iron and in B vitamins. So it's a very good food. In fact, the bulk of the nutrient we eat, 45 to 60% of it should be starch, so that we'll be able to carry on our day-to-day activities.
Starch and bobo gari processing is a lucrative business in Delta State. Women form cooperative groups to farm cassava, process, sell, and share the proceeds. Palm oil is added to starch when preparing it, giving it a beautiful yellow color and fortifying it with vitamin A. Are you planning a trip to Delta State? Treat yourself with a plate of starch and banga or owo soup. You will like the experience.
I can assure you that we are salivating as much as you're salivating. The feeling is mutual, and I'm going to hold my producer accountable for that, for making us feel this way this morning. All right, speaking of that, some questions are coming in here. Maybe I'll take 2 or 3 before I let you go. The first one here says, our bread story, cassava bread story, why is it not in the market now?
Well, the high quality cassava flour of Jonathan administration, which was an initiative of the federal government under Adesina as Minister of Agriculture then, did well because the essence was the inclusion of flour, cassava flour into the wheat flour, for bread making and other confectionaries. Actually, it wasn't a failed project. Just that when the cassava growers we grow the cassava based on the fund released by the Ministry of Agriculture, through Bank of Agriculture then. By the time the cassava got matured, the machineries that were supposed to be used by the processors were not available for them to mill this cassava into flour, for the millers to use and then give to the master bakers. So there was glut all over the country, and then that's disencouraged a lot of farmers not to go back again to the farm, because by the time the cassava was matured, there was no off-taker. Originally designed
so
to
it was more
off-take.
like a loss for the farmers.
So the cost of uprooting the cassava was even higher than the cost of the production. So a lot of farmers abandoned the farms. And before you know it, as I told you earlier, cassava is the only crop that stays more than 1 year in the farm. By the time there was no other crops in the farm, the place was bushy, herders grazed in, and most of these farms were lost. So
in other words, if the investment is made again on the machines, there's possibility of our cassava bread being
for sure.
All right, that's a good one. And the next question here, someone says gari is not good for our eyes. So what is the importance of gari in our eyes?
Well, as I told you earlier, we have the vitamin A gari, and gari contains a lot of nutrients. Gari contains a lot of vitamins, and as I told you earlier, these things are some of the fears that is being orchestrated by these international organizations, especially those bringing in cornflakes, bringing in rice and other things, so that we will abandon our local God-given food. Gari cannot make you go blind. That is just life from the pit of hell. Gari is good. Gari cannot make you go blind.
Thank you so much. Gari is good, and it will never. He actually said there is vitamin A inside gari, but I'm sure that we should pay attention to the processing even as we consume. We're having this lovely conversation with a man who is a representation of a group called the Nigerian Cassava Growers Association. Actually, he is a PRO of that group, and he is Austin Maduka. He also insisted, I should add, the fact that he is a chief. Okay, you're a chief in your village, but also know that you're a true Nigerian and speaks a lot of our Nigerian languages. In Akwana,
Lafiya lau.
Sanu?
Sanu, Mamana.
All right, we'll take a break now, pick some beers, and we'll come back. The show continues. Okay, we can do it, and we're still on our cassava story. Now, before my last guest, stepped out, someone asked a question. It says, our cassava bread, where are we? And for us, it is pertinent. And Suleiman actually took the bull by the horn. When he dipped down, did his research, and brought in a report. Let's see Suleiman's story, the cassava bread.
Nigeria is the world's leading producer of cassava. And as far back as 1982, the government created initiatives to harness this valuable natural resource by introducing cassava bread into the country. The campaign over the years had been for bakers to include only 10 to 20% of cassava flour in their bread recipe to discourage importation of wheat. The most recent revival of the cassava bread initiative came during the Goodluck Jonathan administration. He increased the levy on imported wheat by 15% to encourage cassava flour production.
The policy of cassava bread is aimed at a production and processing of cassava as an engine room for rural development, and it involves the Ministry of Agriculture setting up of the Cassava Bread Fund. This Cassava Bread Fund is to ensure there is financial assistance to micro, small, and large-scale producers, beneficiaries across the 36 states of the country.
As of 2013, over 200 billion naira had accrued to the Cassava Bread Fund through the Nigerian Customs and the Federal Ministry of Finance as collecting agents, and at least 10 billion naira was approved for disbursement.
The funds were disbursed based on the criteria set up. And the criteria set up then was for the ministry to select those associations and forward to the banks, the two major banks used for benefiting in these funds. For the BOA, they involved in the production of cassava to generate cassava root that will be used in the production of high-quality cassava flour. It is this high-quality cassava flour that the other institution, that is BOI, we now use the fund to produce, to buy equipment. They have the Bank of Industry too as their own beneficiaries. These beneficiaries now use the fund to procure the equipment.
Under the former Minister of Agriculture, Akiwumi Adesina, disbursements were structured to cover a value chain from the growth of cassava to the processing of high-quality cassava flour and equipment support for master bakers. All these categories of funds were supposed to be disbursed between January 2014 and September 2015, as backed up with an MOU signed by the Bank of Industry and the Federal Ministry of Agriculture.
Information from the report which BOI gave the ministry, 204 beneficiaries benefited from the loan, while as of March 2021, only 14 has fully paid back. The fund is supposed to be a revolving fund. That is part of the reason that if some people benefit now, when they refund the loan, it will use for others. That's the reason why we can assess that it didn't reach many people. Many of the beneficiaries on this policy have their own issues based on the equipment procured on the farm. Those of them that collected the money for production, they have the challenge of cattle header clashes because they were unable to produce enough cassava roots at that time to be used for high quality cassava. These are some of the challenges that the program has. The higher the increase in percentage of cassava that is used for high quality cassava to be mixed with flour, the more we will be reducing the amount of wheat we are using for bread. This will have positive impact on the amount of money that we are using to import wheat should reduce, and we will more or less impacting positively on our farmers here rather than engaging many farmers in another country.
The Cassava Bread Initiative was meant to save the nation tremendous foreign exchange. Despite the failure of the initiative to materialize, many still believe that with the right legislation, the cassava industry can stimulate rural development, employment creation, and value addition to local raw material.
Yes, cassava bread. I'm happy that it is still on, and I want to say a big thank you to Suleiman for that story. And I have someone who will still be, portraying further on this particular feature. He's seated right here with me. He is the president, National Cassava Exporters Association of Nigeria. Yes, for those of us who've been asking questions about the export capacity, we'll get that answered. He is also the chairman, Cassava Agro Industry Services Limited, and he is Mr. Boma Simeon Anga.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so and now the very first question we were discussing behind camera is still the bread.
Okay.
And you're going to take a step further and tell me, where are we?
Well, the initiative to incorporate cassava flour into bread making started with the Obasanjo administration, where it became a policy and continued all the way to Jonathan's administration. but it was abandoned afterwards. But it's still active.
Okay. To a certain percentage.
Initially, it was mandated. It means it was compulsory.
Okay.
But now it's now voluntary. The master bakers and the flour millers, they blend this composite flour for bread production when it is competitive to do so. As you know, the cost of wheat is rising as the exchange rate is going above the roof. So many times the exchange rate becomes too expensive or too unfavorable for wheat importation. Then they compensate for wheat importation using cassava flour in a.
Now, when you say blend, does it mean that they mix it together?
Yes, it's blended.
Okay, so a bit of this in one loaf.
It's a ratio of 80-20. 80% wheat flour, 20% cassava flour. So the new mixture is called composite flour.
Okay.
Used for bread production and all confectionaries. It's still in force. There are still many bakeries that are using composite flour.
I mean, if it works and it's good, it tastes nice, right?
Oh yes, it tastes very nice.
Okay, so why won't we make that regular?
It's regular, like I said. It's all a matter of economics. Whenever production of cassava is competitively priced in Nigeria, it means that surplus production prices come down. The inclusion of cassava flour in bread production increases, but whenever the prices of cassava goes up, the inclusion also reduces. So it's a factor of the cost of cassava at any point in time.
Okay, as a case of the bakers, whichever one falls better for them. And I'm wondering where we are, talking about export. But before I get that, question answered by you, let's look at something together, put by Bayo Ogori.
With a decline in oil prices coupled with challenges of the coronavirus pandemic and mounting debts and global shift to the use of green energy, with emphasis on the use of electricity as a substitute for oil in the transport sector. The need to diversify the Nigerian economy to non-oil sectors such as agriculture has become imperative.
Cassava has a lot of export potentials. The cassava chips alone, it has a very, very big market in the world, especially China, especially the industrialized nations, because it is used in so many industrial activities, productions, and like it is used in the garment industry, it is used in the pharmaceutical industry, it is used in the food industry, cassava. So it has it is for industrial consumptions and also for domestic consumptions. That is cassava for you.
Experts have called for the need to look inwards within the agricultural value chain. Aside from the push for rice production in Nigeria, cassava is a veritable crop that can boost Nigeria's foreign exchange earnings if properly harnessed.
Well, concerted efforts are ongoing, as a matter of fact. I know the central bank is doing a lot of things because it's encouraging the Uncle Boros program in it. And from there you bring out a lot of cassava that you can process. Not just taking unprocessed, the processed one. Let there be starch, industrial starch, for the use of pharmaceutical industries. They do come here to buy. The industry is fast coming up. The ethanol, these sanitizers and whatever, are made from the ethanol, and ethanol from cassava. So our home consumptions alone in this country on cassava is a lot. It's a lot. And across our borders, our land borders here, you can see that we're exporting processed semi-cassava foods across the borders. Now. This fufu and whatever. It's been exported across the borders.
Despite the huge opportunities in the international market for cassava export, Nigeria is still struggling to meet the domestic demand. One wonders why Nigerian farmers are not taking advantage of these opportunities.
Well, I want you to believe that Nigeria is the biggest producer of cassava in the world. The varieties we have in cassava, they are really good varieties. And you know, cassava is consumed in every household in different forms. So it is more or less a staple food everywhere in Nigeria. So if cassava in it where it is a staple food and is being produced virtually everywhere in Nigeria, then it becomes a national commodity, national food.
Cassava production, if well promoted, can be a major source of foreign exchange earning for the country. It is a crop with enormous potentials.
All right, good one there. Now, as the president of the National Association of Exporters of Nigeria,
Cassava exporters.
Cassava Exporters of Nigeria, I would like you to give me, statistically speaking, how well we're doing within that environment.
Well, right now, cassava, statistically speaking, is one of the highest commodity exported out of Nigeria.
In different forms, you mean?
In processed form.
Okay.
In processed form, but it is informal export.
Okay.
So it's not captured into the mainstream of regular commodity exports in Nigeria. Cassava is the biggest agricultural production in Nigeria, 64 million tons currently.
Yes.
As at last year. And Gari is the largest commodity in Nigeria, 12 million tons. No other commodity comes close. The closest is rice. Rice is just 7 million tons. Cassava is 12 million tons, and it's growing at 20 to 25% growth rate per annum. So it's significant, and the growth is being boosted by the increased consumption across all of Africa. Now, I need you to know that there are over 25 million Nigerians in diaspora that are homesick, and the only way they feel at home is when they eat their local delicacies.
Are you telling me?
Yes. In the new realities we live right now with COVID around, the exportation of cassava in forms such as glucose, starch, and ethanol is about to begin to explode. Nigeria is currently the largest processor of cassava in Africa and will soon be in the world if the current investment trends continues.
Do we have a privilege of getting to know what your association is doing to ensure that, I don't want to call them defaulters, but these non-tax-paying people are put on the mainstream?
Well, working with the government, the relevant government agency, NEPC, the Central Bank, and the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Commerce, as well as Ministry of Agriculture and Nigerian Customs, we want to provide incentives to all the people who are into this formal trade, to this engage in this informal export of cassava, to formalize their activities. We want to provide incentives. Incentive would include access to funding. Incentive would also include registration, tax exemption. We want to find out the kind of incentive packages that will appeal to them so that voluntarily
they can
we begin to capture the statistics that reflect the true value from cassava exports, so that this income, the income streams, is reflected in the federal government reserves as export earnings that was achieved through cassava export, because it's huge.
Speaking of the cassava and exports, if I am a cassava grower or processor, whatever we want to term it, how can I get to you, your association, to ensure that I export right and I don't get cheated?
Oh, that's an excellent question. There are three things you can do. One, you could just drop by in our association office.
And it's everywhere?
To make it everywhere, we are also we are going to launch our portal a new portal next week. So with the portal, you can do online registration anywhere from the comfort of your home. And you have free training, free capacity building. There are 3 things that it exposes you to. 1, it tells you about the cassava in Nigeria, the entire value chain. And then it tells you how to, the opportunities available for cassava export, the different market segmentation. And then it guides you through how to choose a particular niche that will fit you. And then when you find your niche, it also tells you the export processing steps that you need to take to become a cassava exporters, and how to also access those markets. We provide you a lot of market access information for free.
But then you're talking about domestic, demand. That tells me that there's a whole lot of uses we can put to it, and particularly types of meals we can make out of it. Which is your favorite?
My favorite is fufu, odorless fufu flour.
Odorless fufu flour. That's giving it a package. But let's go to Maiduguri and find out how it's eaten in the north.
Cassava is an important food crop. It is rich and an affordable source of carbohydrate stable, which is consumed by humans.
Cassava can be grown in all parts of the country. You narrow it to Borno State, you realize this crop can actually be cultivated in perhaps most of the agroecological zones, southern and the northern. But however, you have what they call the comparative advantage. You realize these crops can be grown and perform better in some axes than others, perhaps in the southern compared to the northern.
Cassava is extensively used for multivarious baked, fried, and boiled products. However, cassava consumption varies. It is mostly consumed in Borno State as danwake, wainan rogo, and boiled by some individuals. Amongst them, danwake, which is being made from cassava flour, is more widely accepted. It is consumed with variety of additives such as vegetable oil, seasoning, salad, lime, and egg.
I don't know danwake. I don't know how they prepare it. I've never heard of it. I came here and all of a sudden I started joining my friends eating danwake. They know how to prepare it very well. The salads mixed with what's it called, bama, and the moi moi and all that. It's quite sweet and everything. That's why I prefer eating, especially eating danwake.
Cassava business is one of the profitable businesses in Nigeria that can serve as a means of livelihood to farmers and those that sells the cassava products.
Our business is going, the people are coming every time, every moment, come and buy it.
Farmers that are actually into it can be able to tell you that cassava is actually a very good source of income. It's a marginal crop. Relatively, it requires little inputs, for instance, on a crop, compared to other crops. However, when it comes to the issue of fertilizer and what have you, realize cassava requires more of the fertilizer.
When you see a good food, you have to appreciate it and know where it is coming from and the processes it has gone through.
You know how they said, this life is not balanced. Life is not balanced. And this morning, the wahala I see be like bicycle. But I will not talk. Keep, taunting me with food. I will not talk. We'll just continue our conversation. A whole lot of good things coming out of cassava, and I'm happy I am part of this discussion because I've been learning a whole lot from you. You said there are over 1,000 produce from cassava. High value products. So there are even lower ones even. So
high value has to do with the income that can be derived from them.
So which of them are the most demanded when it comes to exports?
Well, there are so many. But let me just mention a few that I will call low-hanging fruits for every Nigerian to be able to access. There are 3 parts to cassava. You have the stem,
okay.
You have the tubers, then you have the leaves.
Oh, the leaves?
Yes.
You cook with it?
All part of cassava can be exported. We're exporting the stems all over Africa. We're exporting the tubers, fresh, frozen. You export frozen cassava, fresh cassava. And then the leaf, it's a huge export because the leaves are being used as a source of high protein.
The leaves?
Oh, the leaf have one of the highest amount of protein.
Wow.
That can rival even egg.
Are you serious?
Yes, they make a baby food formula from the leaf alone, extracting the protein from the leaf, and then it's also used as a foliage, an animal feed ingredient when you are looking for high quality protein.
Wow, that's good. So some questions are actually coming in here. Let's see if we can take some, so that because it's supposed to be a conversation between us and the people out there. Someone says, I will ask if the national body can reach the grassroots through the local government level. This will help the local farmers in proving their produce. I don't know. Your association, is it nationwide?
Yes, it's nationwide, and we are also will soon formalize our working relationship with the Association of Local Government Councils in Nigeria.
Okay, beautiful. Dear presenter, Weekend You, thank you for the info and update on the cassava. However, the problems are policies, inconsistency, lack of access to markets. That's someone from Wuse here. He says his name is Ezoduno. Okay, thank you. Do you share his opinion?
Yes. He's spot on. He's saying the truth.
Okay.
Policy somersault is frequent. When the government change and they are not from the same party, policy completely change. There is no policy continuity. But I believe that is changing.
All right, it's a nice one, and with that, we are actually wrapping up for today. Well, from the messages here, a lot of people are asking me to give them the number of my last guests. I will be doing that, but on one premise, which he has given me, that you state the reason why you want the number. And for those of us who are also looking for links on how to, source help, he has also advised that you can visit the Agricultural Development Project in your different states, local governments, they are all there. Or if you want to do it online, indicate, via here, I will also send you the links. For now, I'll just say, let me go out and see if I can have my cassava flakes for breakfast. My appetite has been waited. Let's see. See you again tomorrow.